Hi, Michelle. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. Hi, Riza. Thanks for having me.
No, I'm excited to talk about San Miguel de Allende. It's become such an incredible, popular place, destination, I think, for a lot of people, especially for those who don't feel like they need to be near the beach, but they want to have, more temperate climates and such. Um, so tell me a little bit about where you're from and how you landed in San Miguel.
Well, I'm originally from Toronto, Canada, and I pretty much grew up in Connecticut as a child, until I was around 20 something. And I moved a little bit around the United States, not much, but a little bit, and landed in Miami and lived in Florida for about 10 years, and then decided I wanted to move to another country. Mexico was on my radar, but I investigated some other countries as well. And I just felt that Mexico made sense for me and my son because I had visited before I had him. I came a lot to Mexico. I visited San Miguel in 2005, and it was just a very slow, kind of sleepy town. And at that point of my life, I just kind of felt it wasn't a good fit for me. But after getting to like 2015, 2016, 2017 was when I got very serious about moving abroad and decided to come back to Mexico. And San Miguel was on the list of cities that I wanted to revisit and just check out and just try it on and see, like, is this a good spot for us to settle down and, move abroad. And so when I got here in December 2017, it was just kind of like it felt right. Even though I didn't have a real good plan, it was more of just kind of like, okay, go visit some cities, see how it feels, check out the vibe of those places, and then go from there and see where you want to really dig down deep into. But when I came here, it just was really an amazing holiday season. I like the whole family feel of the city, the Christmas, the everything. And I just kind of felt like this feels good. But I went ahead and visited Mexico City. I didn't make it to Merida, but it was on my list. And I didn't make it to Guadalajara. And I thought, well, if I wasn't satisfied with these other two of these other places, then I will check out those other cities. But I was just very content with San Miguel. So I decided to go back to Florida and do a lot of digging and research from that point. And yeah, 6 months later, we were here.
Wow, so only 6 months. And I think that's a really good reminder that, moving abroad is not easy, first of all, and we all know it is. Most people dream about it, but never actually do it, I think.
Yeah.
And that sometimes it takes a long time, right? Sometimes it's not just this like, the fact that you went for the first time in 2005, but didn't actually move there until 2017
Yeah.
is it's amazing, right? That you remembered it and you didn't think that you would ever move there, and yet here you are. So never say never, first of
Right.
all.
Exactly.
Um, so what are some of the things that you needed to do? Because your son was already around, right? He was young
Yeah.
when you moved. So what were some of the things, if you remember, like you really needed to kind of put in a knot, knowing that you were leaving, permanently or at least for a long time?
Well, I would say I think my initial research was where should I settle down? And then once San Miguel kind of felt like that's my place, I really tried to find a lot of videos about schools and families because I wanted to see like what were their experiences, even if they were older videos. And that's kind of what I found. People talking about like one of the Waldorf schools, just them raising their children, why they came, what their experience was like. They did a lot. Some people did like homeschooling and things like that, and I knew that that wasn't really my thing. So I had to take another trip. So I made another trip back to San Miguel once it just kind of started sinking in. This is kind of where I want to be. So let me make another research trip. So I did that and I interviewed schools. So for me, having a child, it was really priority to understand the lay of the land when it came to the education process. I wasn't so worried about where am I going to live, and I knew the cost of living was less. And that was also part of the reason for moving here. But I was more kind of like, is it family friendly? What's the vibe of the city? Of course, coming from the US, we're always asking, is it safe? Things like this, even though I had traveled quite a bit prior, but when you're traveling, it's not the same as living. So I really wanted to just kind of come with a different lens of how would it be for us to live here. And everything just indicated that it would be amazing in general. Now, is it easy? No, it's not. There's a lot of work involved. And I think that now know now I know a lot more, and I've also worked with a lot of people in the same line, and I know you have too, is that you have to put the research in, you have to ask the right questions. It's smart to get help because you can end up spending a lot more money from lack of knowledge, and that's what happened to me. I didn't understand the visa process fully, so I literally made three separate trips to immigration and all these things that kind of got consolidated into a 6-month time frame that could have been very stressful if I didn't have like this overzealous joy of leaving. So I really was just like, if I just tumble into Mexico, it's going to be what it's going to be. We'll make it work. But I can understand where some of those things can be very stressful.
Right. I mean, I think that that's if there are certain things that you could tell yourself now, or your present self could tell yourself back 5 years ago, aside from the visa process, are there certain things that that advice that you would give people who are thinking about moving now, like make sure you do this or make sure you do that, or
Absolutely.
things to keep in mind?
Absolutely. I mean, for me, I think it's very important to go to the place. Not everyone does this, but I think it's important. One, well, I should say before that, is to know yourself, right? Really assess, why do you want to leave, right? Is it just about money? I just want to live for less. Or is it, I want to live somewhere else because, I've been here for a long time and now I want to retire, or I want to move somewhere else, or I'm, younger and I just want to, I'm a digital nomad and I want to travel. Really understand what your reasons are, and then do the homework and do the research and try to get into the right circles to get all the questions answered that are really relevant to your specific situation, because what and how I moved here with a child doesn't necessarily apply to someone who's retired on a fixed budget or income and doesn't want to work, right? So I think you have to really think about your reasons, the emotions. Can you handle it? Like, are you that adventurous? Do you speak the language? There's so many things that I think um, people don't realize. It's exciting. Don't get me wrong, it's exciting. But I've seen folks that came and they did not last because they didn't do their planning. They did not do research. They didn't ask the right questions necessarily, or no questions, and they probably came thinking like, oh, I had a great time in Cancun at a resort and I loved it and I went here and it was a beautiful country and blah blah blah. But those are all guided kind of things, right? Those are more guided experiences. But when you're literally like, think about being in a home, it's your home and you're on your own, right? What is that for you? And can you say, you know what, every day I'm going to get up and I'm going to make this work, right? You have to think about those processes, because what we know and what we're used to is very different from what you're going to get in another country. It's not just Mexico. I think this is anywhere you go, you're going to run into challenges. And then there's the language. And I think the language for me was always kind of the biggest barrier, is just the understanding of how to do things and why this process is whatever. There are so many, even after 5 years, there are so many things that are very frustrating. Um, and yes, there's always a fix, but sometimes it's just a lot slower. So for me, one of the things that I would probably do different would be to kind of get help. I didn't have a lot of help out there, but I would have gotten a little bit more help, maybe. Not even about selecting my house, because where I ended up living, I loved it. I loved that development, but just kind of getting help with understanding how things work, how bills are paid. The banking system was a little bit tricky, a little archaic. How does this work? And all the paperwork that I had to sign, getting through the online part, getting someone to help me set up online, getting someone to say, you know what, you can look at your bank account in English if you go to Google Chrome. These are just like little gems that I found out along the way by just talking to other expats. Like, oh, I never was using Google. I was using Sapphire or Safari. And it's just one of those things where all these little things were kind of coming up along the way through just basic conversation. But before that, I was really doing a lot of manual things because I didn't know how to do the faster, more automated way. And it takes time. I thought moving my things, it would just be like, okay, we're going to settle in and it's going to be very easy. And we're going to unpack in 2 months and that's it. And Micah's got to school and everything is golden. No, it felt like it took a good solid year just to kind of feel settled, especially if you have children. The school was just not right. And then we tried another school. And then I was like down to school number 3 in one school year. So there's a lot to know. So these are all the things that I think people don't know they're going to possibly run into, but you just have to be ready for it and be open and embrace that. Those are the cons possibly, but understanding there are definitely a lot more pros, but you have to make a plan. You have to come with just kind of like, this is how I'm going to do it, and a whole bucket of patience. A bucket.
Well, you have a very kind of calming presence, so I imagine you have a lot of patience. So when it comes to San Miguel specifically,
Mhm.
so how did you even find your apartment, your house?
Well, the first research trip I did, I think we kind of got lucky because the gentleman who picked us up from the airport in Mexico City, this is how much I didn't know. I didn't know there was an airport closer. So I took a flight to the airport that was 4 hours away and got picked up by, the shuttle company. I think the Airbnb host told me about the company that she relied on. And I said, great. So these, again, little gems, right? You ask questions, you get answers. And she was also an American woman living here for a long time. So I was staying at her place. And, she was just like, okay, this place will come and get you. So basically, fast forwarding to getting here, this gentleman was very nice. He spoke English, so we had plenty of time to talk to him in the shuttle. And I just asked him, "Hey, can you drive us around the following day?" And because I don't know, I think I assumed that the vehicle was his to do whatever he wanted, and it wasn't. But I said, "Hey, can you drive us around because you speak English? Can you show us the different neighborhoods in San Miguel just to kind of get a visual feel for what it was?" And he said sure. And I remember he came and he didn't have the same car. He had like I guess it was his car, I don't know, but it was an older car that just seemed like it might make it, but maybe not. But we were like, we just want to see the neighborhoods. And he wanted to take us on a walking tour. And I was like, I don't want to go on a walking tour. I just want to see neighborhoods. So we paid him for the day to drive us around and around. And we stopped at one development, again, not knowing how things work in Mexico, because in the US, when you go to like a multi-unit place, usually it's either they're being sold or they're for rent, right? Here, it's kind of all of them are being sold, but whoever may have bought 10 of them are renting those units. So we saw this development. We went over, we started to talk to the lady, and we were asking, hey, are any of these for rent? They were saying no. They were showing us the ones for sale and how much they cost, blah, blah, blah. And then we said, do you know anywhere else similar to this where they have rentals? So that's how we kind of connected with the realtor we ended up using, and she pointed us to the place we moved to, which was El Secreto. And the very first place that they showed us in that particular development was for rent. And we liked it. You know, I can't say I loved it initially, and that's only because in my mind at that point, I was only there to look. I wasn't like, I had no plan of, oh, we're leaving in 6 months. I knew we were leaving, but I didn't, not 6 months. I was just like, I just want to see stuff, right? And everyone wants to see stuff. You want to know, like, what can I get for my money? So we saw this place. I love the development, was beautiful, you know, lots of really cool amenities and things like that. And the price was right, you know. And so we got in touch with the person who was managing it. We kept her number, and she kept saying, yeah, 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 you know, we'll keep it until um, June or July if you're coming. Initially, I don't know how the conversation led to, oh, we're coming in 30 days. And I was like, no, we're not. We're not. No, my son's still in school. That's the end of January. It's the end of December. No, that's not happening. But I'll keep the info. And I wasn't stressed about it, but that's sort of how that happened. We saw it. I liked it. Then when I went back in February, it was still available. I think they were Airbnb kind of, but very like, you know, not stressed about it. And believe it or not, it was still there in June. So
Oh, wow.
it worked out. It was meant to be. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Um, you mentioned the neighborhood of El Secreto,
Mhm.
and I believe you actually. So you since moved, and you're in a gated community. Is that right?
Correct. Yes. Yeah.
So gated communities are kind of popular in San Miguel, or they're becoming popular, but not in Centro. In Centro, you know, it's mainly homes,
Right.
but outside of that, you there's kind of a growing number of gated communities.
Exactly. So, not too far outside of Central, there are lots of gated communities. I am a little farther out. This development, I don't know how long it's been here, but it was certainly here when I came 5 years ago. But that's kind of the new rave. And I think it's very like modeled after, you know, the United States and, you know, Canada maybe, where people want to be in this kind of setting. And so they are building a lot of developments that are closer to Central. Instead of building maybe homes and things like that, they're building a lot of townhouses. I would just call them all townhouses with all the amenities and the security guards and all this other stuff. And it's just kind of crazy because I mean, every time I turn around and I drive down a different street, and there are just more and more of them. So it has become something that I think is pretty popular here. I think people feel safer in those settings, and especially if you have children and if you travel, I think that that's why a lot of people kind of gravitate towards them. If, for example, you just want to be here for 6 months, you don't have to really worry about your space for the other 6 months if you're not there physically all the time. And I think it's a good way to start your living abroad if you're a single or individual that just kind of is like, you know, I'm going to be living alone. I think it's not a bad option. I think a lot of people try that way first.
That's great. And along this lines of like, you know, making sure you ask the right questions or asking questions, and there's no wrong question to ask. I think that holds true. We were talking before we even got on the call about kind of whether people are looking to purchase a property for investment, or if you're going to want to, you know, start a business while you're there, you know, you want to kind of have a side hustle, that there's a lot of gray area, right?
Yeah.
um, So, because I know that, a lot of people also who are looking to retire to Mexico, oftentimes they'll try to buy something years ahead, when they're 50 or whatever, so that they can slowly move down there and only use it for a couple of months out of the year and then rent it out for the remainder.
Right.
And you yourself have kind of delved into, starting a business
Hmm.
down there. And so tell me a little bit about what that experience has been like, kind of what the concept is, because I think I love the concept. And then, why you wanted to do it and how that process has been for you.
Okay, so in regard to doing a business in Mexico, it's very doable, contrary to, I think, some misconceptions. You can have a business, but you definitely need to get legal advice. Obtaining the correct legal advice can be challenging. And I think a lot of foreigners will run into some sort of challenge and setback, between getting not clear advice, bad advice, inaccurate advice. And it's still going to always kind of fall on you as the person with the idea. It's not impossible, but if you're a tourist on a tourist visa, you definitely need to, kind of get clear on exactly how to go about doing that. I don't know how that works, but if you are an actual resident, whether temporary or permanent, it kind of depends on what type of business you want to start, right? So is it a brick and mortar? Is it a restaurant? Is it whatever? Is it just a food delivery, thing? At the end of the day, what you really need to get first is a lawyer, an attorney who really knows what they're talking about. And by getting that person, I think you'll kind of start out on the right path. You need an RFC, which is pretty much like a tax ID number. There are plenty of people here that can help you with that process. It is free. I will say that hiring someone to help you will cost money, but to do the RSC, you need that because they want you to pay taxes on what you earn. If you earn US dollars, you still have to pay taxes on it. It's just kind of, how do you communicate? Like I earned this amount and now I'm bringing it to bringing it to Mexico. So there are a lot of like intricacies that you really need to understand just to kind of be preventative in nature. My personal experiences have been that I have a fabulous beast of an attorney who has really helped with a lot of things. And I was giving him some of my opinion a couple months ago, and I said, I don't think you or others who are capable realize that there are plenty of people like, foreigners that are coming here that could use your services. And so you should kind of offer, and I know there are companies that do offer, that specifically. We'll help you with a business. I think some of those companies are more for like, bigger, like a manufacturing plant or a corporation or something. But, there are a lot of people that are coming now that want to live abroad and maybe, a capable attorney could offer a package, because it's a basic thing. It's just you have to kind of set yourself up and then you need to get a proper accountant to help you with your papers and all that other stuff. So, fast forward to what I'm doing. It was one of those things where I kind of jumped in. It's not an Airbnb, it's my personal space. It's kind of like we're not doing rooms per se. We're offering people who are interested in moving to San Miguel the opportunity to come and connect with local experts. We work with local experts that they can talk to, have a presentation, ask, do a whole Q&A session with these individuals on those 5 days that they're here and get all the answers they need to help them relocate with a smoother outcome versus my bumpy outcome 5 years ago. So that was sort of how,
So it's like a relocation
sort of,
retreat
yeah,
place.
relocation tour. We basically work with um, you know, anyone that's interested in really seeing is San Miguel for them. You know, we really focus on this part of Mexico because this is where I live and where I'm familiar with. And so, yeah, that's kind of the process, and that's sort of kind of the way it developed itself. I started with doing online, and I still do online consultations, and then moving into giving them a full week that is connecting them to the resources that they need, including neighborhood tour, immigration presentation, speaking to bankers, speaking to medical people on how they can get insurance. And these are all, locals that live here, and they can talk to them for, an hour. And once they leave, here's your phone number, and this is who can answer all your questions when you're ready to go through those steps. And also teaching people to do it the right way, meaning don't just come on a tourist visa and set up shop. Like get your paperwork right. There are ways to do it starting in the US, and for a short period of time, there are ways to do it right here in Mexico. And we can connect you with those people. So that's sort of how um, what I do developed into what it is today.
That's amazing and so needed. I mean, clearly it grew out of personal experience, right?
Yeah.
Of not having that go-to person. And there are just so many different elements where you need to really think about when you are moving abroad. And then, you know, trying to earn money and, making a business out of it is a whole other layer that you don't want to screw it up, basically, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, I mean, as we kind of start to wrap this up, I
Mhm.
just wanted to ask you, now that you've been there for 5 years, and your son clearly has, I'm assuming, settled there, has adjusted, um, what kinds of things should people really be thinking about? You know, they want to move abroad. They've figured out that they want to do, that they want to be in San Miguel de Allende.
You need to assess yourself and what you like and what your situation is and why you're coming to Mexico, right? I think that those are kind of more priority than just the cost of living, because if you're leaving the United States for some things that are more like internal, you're going to bring a lot of that with you. And I'm saying it because I've experienced it with people. And it's kind of like, this isn't a vacation. This is where you choose to relocate. Relocating is a lot of work. It's a lot of frustrations and stresses. But one of the things that I would say is if you can come again, do a trip, research, check out those neighborhoods. If you are even able to come and stay in one or two of those places for a few weeks at a time, walk around, see what it feels like to you, to be sure before you come and just sign a 12-month lease. And also make sure that you like this place that looks pretty maybe on the facade, but what is it really like inside? People need to understand that San Miguel is like a 200-year-old city. So in Central, all the houses are kind of different, right? We're not talking about the developments. I live in a really nice place, but it's a cookie cutter, right? So it's a little more predictable. But there are a lot of places in Central that are beautiful, gorgeous, but there are challenges. There's old plumbing, there's old electrical, blah, 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 still very charming. So you kind of need to kind of, assess all of these things along the way and then come with somewhat of a plan. How am I earning my money? Is it a fixed income? What happens when, like right now, what happens when the US dollar is weaker? Can I still afford my cost of living? Making sure that you create a budget for yourself, making sure that you understand the lay of the land. Some of my favorite neighborhoods is exactly where I am outside of the city. But a lot of other people really love being closer to Central because it's walkable. You don't need a car, or you can take the local public transportation, which I think is extremely efficient. Um, there are taxis everywhere. Ubers are not reliable in San Miguel. They are great in Mexico City, but they're not reliable here. Food delivery, things like this. We have all of the kind of like the amenities that a big city would have. There's lots of art and culture and all these fun things. And that's the reason why San Miguel is extremely attractive, because it's sort of like big, big, big city attitude, but in a very compact space. But people love San Antonio, Guadiana, Guadalupe, La Lejona. They love these neighborhoods. Then there's Los Frailes, which is where Casa Elm is. It's a little bit more outside of the city. For some of the neighborhoods I just mentioned, you don't need a car. You can, be close. I have a car because I don't want to be kind of like confined to San Miguel all the time. And I like being able to kind of explore, get outside of the city, go to Querétaro, which is a much bigger city. You can be a little more anonymous there as well. So one of the things that I think is most important is really just sitting down, and if you are someone who plans, write things out. If you're not coming alone, assess the mood of the other people that are coming with you, right? Other people could be a spouse, your children, whatever. um, there's a lot to think about, but you have to understand your situation. And I always tell people when I work with them, this isn't a tell-all for everyone. It really is an individual journey, and you have to understand your journey and what your budget is. Like I said before, if the dollar is weak, which it is now, and my rent suddenly is an extra $100, is that okay for you, right? Because a lot of people come on a social security check. Do you want to have to pay more? No. Am I buying? If you're buying, then that's kind of cleared and out of the way. Am I bringing things with me? Am I bringing my household? Am I shipping, or am I just gonna start all over? So there's a lot to think about, and I think it's really important to kind of make a plan. Do you have to sit down and plan for a year? No. But I would say if you're not retiring right away, try to go ahead and get your residency. You can do that. That's something I didn't know. I actually learned that through doing the relocation tours and speaking to the immigration specialist. And you can actually come and apply for your residency. And once you get it, go back and finish out your job. I have individuals who've done that, and they're still working in the US, but they're planning to come and live in San Miguel because they loved it. And the sooner you do that, if you know for sure you want to be here, the better, because every year, to meet the financial requirement, it increases a lot. From 5 years ago, I think it was around 1,400 per person, US dollars, that you had to make per month. And now I want to say it's close to 3,000 US dollars a month for one person. Now we know we can survive in Mexico for less, again, personal choices, but it's just the way their requirements are set up. So there's a lot to think about, and a lot of choices to make. But I think if you sit down and you just kind of, you know, assess it, take the trip, and see this is where I want to be, and make sure it's for you. Some people come and they're fine. They love it. Some come and they're not sure. They go somewhere else. I've had this happen too. They came, they loved it, but they weren't sure. Oh, I want to go check out Oaxaca. I want to go to Mexico City. I want to go to the Yucatan. And they did that, and they came back because they loved it. In the end, they needed to experience it. So I think it really is always coming down to personal choices.
That's so awesome.
Yeah,
Michelle, thank you so much for being so generous with your advice and wisdom and experience.
absolutely.
So if people want to get in contact with you or they want to follow you on the socials, where do they go?
Casa Elm, casaelm.com, right where my name is below. You can find all the info there about what we do and how we want to help anyone interested in moving to this part of Mexico. And you can also find me on YouTube at Casa Elm Expat Life Mexico. Yeah.
That's awesome. Michelle, thank you so, so much.
Thank you, Riza. Thanks for having me again.